intertwine and shadows dance in this twilight somber trance. Candles flicker, weary wicks, ancient echoes, time's cruel tricks, marble figures, frozen pose, amidst the silence sorrow grows. Whispering shadows, secrets keep in the depths where night meets sleep. Underneath the velvet gloom, guardians of the haunted room. Chandeliers and crystal tears reflect forgotten yesteryears, softly chanting distant cries. Through the arches sorrow sighs. Gargoyles watch with stony gaze, guardians of endless maze. Pipe organ's breath begins to rise, filling air with mournful ties. Whispering shadows, secrets keep in the depths where night meets sleep. Underneath the velvet gloom, guardians of the haunted room.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am unsupervised and hoping things are working correctly, and I'm here. How are we? It's Lady Red, Black Pants Legion, doing the thing. How is chat? How is everybody? I see we have many of the usual familiar faces who turn up to put up with my nonsense every week, which I'm very grateful. Things are not obviously broken. Fantastic. I have been left to do my thing on my own, so, you know, we just hope that it works. Stepping on Aiden too, probably. He's at work today, so he's safe from me at the moment. But you may hear some dogs going on in the background because they've decided that today, instead of post-lunch nap, we will have post-lunch wrestling. So they are in a mood. I did also have the wonderful moment, because she's awake at start of stream for a change, Sarah's watching Dancing Digs on my screen and just staring at it with, like, you know, the 1,000-yard Vietnam stare. So that was a thing. All right, let me pull chat over here so I can see you guys a little bit clearly while we're having a witter. There are pets being redeemed. Pip is getting all of the pets right now. He is on my hip and demanding scruffle scritches, so I will pet the heck out of him. Oh God, now Anka's trying to be up here as well. Hello, baby. You are not missing food. There is no food. We have had lunch. It's finished. It's gone. It's done. You ate it. Yes. Thank you. All right, let's see. What has chat got? Yeah, wrestling one full, yes. We've literally seen in the past Sarah actually suplex Anka, which was impressive because I didn't know dogs could do that, but that happened. That has happened. She says, I'm good. We got the news on what Magic is doing next year. We're visiting an underwater plane. And I immediately thought of Shoal. Amazing. It would be very interesting if they have mechs. If they have underwater mechs and they're psychically controlled, then you know that they stole it from us. We did it first. Cookie is also here. A brain is not braining and I have the homeworks. That part is not so good. Have tea about it? Tea usually helps me to brain better, but some days the brain just leaves. Pip is now making grunty noises. I choose to believe this is him talking to you, chat, and appreciating all of the pets that you guys have redeemed. So, shoal things. I've written 2 chapters this week because last week got kind of emotionally deep, etc., etc., and I think we made some people the sads. So I think we need to sort of progress from there. So I was good this week. I've worked on 2 chapters. I've got about 9,000 words to share with you guys, and it's going to leave us in another very dramatic position going forward, which I would love your thoughts on. So we will do that. Digiman says, mechs are more for the next set where the giant monster plane is invading the cyberpunk Japanese plane. Interesting. Okay, then we don't have to go and accuse them of plagiarism and send the Pinkertons over there or whatever. Well, we don't need to do this thing. We do the stealing around here. Who do they think they are? Cargo? I mean, they won't be anywhere near as good at it as this particular community is, which, incidentally, chat, are you aware that you are, in fact, the best community on Twitch? Whether I'm, popping by to see somebody else's stream or, oh God. Before I get to that, first time chat from Concept 10. First time in, a friend rather unsubtly told me to show up on pain of nipple cripples. That is either the best friendship in the world or you need to run away. Don't walk. Welcome in. It's lovely to have you here. This is the streaming arm of the Black Pants Legion. We're a community channel. We do a lot of different things. So if you don't like what you end up finding here this time round with me, just turn up later. There'll be something infinitely more interesting on. We also have our Discord, the auxiliary, which you're very welcome to join. There is something in there that everybody will like. My best suggestion to you to retain your sanity, if you are a new person and choose to join the Orcs, pick like 4 things you're interested in and put everything else, onto mute and only engage with it when you want to, because there is so much in there. So many things. Yeah, we do a lot of crabbing around here. This is our underwater mecha setting that we've built over the course of a year and a half at this point. And one of our races, one of our species, is crab people, and they're called ceratinoids, and everybody's rather keen on the ceratinoids. We will be having quite a lot of ceratinoid action in today's reading as well. Jabra has things to say and do, which I'm sure will please the group. But yes, I was telling you guys what a great community you are and what a great chat, because you're always sharing your insanely long watch streaks and saying wonderful things and talking to whoever is streaming in the best way. And it just, thank you. You guys are the best community on Twitch, and also get the one full joke. Oh, okay, let's read this. Concept says, to quote said friend, as a way of selling your stream? I mean, this particular slot is my stream, but God knows what else goes on this channel. We do all sorts. That and Lady Red did a rewrite of one of the most infamous Battletech novels known to man that was written as a gag. Hungry Like the Wolf. Said novel is basically a romance novel where the main love interest of the main character is frigging Alaric Ward the Ilkhan. Yes. That was a big project we did earlier this year, and then we read it in April for April Fools. We completely rewrote Hungry Like the Wolf to make it actually fun. We redid it in the style of Chuck Tingle, with some Terry Pratchett influence thrown in, some of my own voice. We had a lot of fun with it, and it will be an audiobook for Christmas this year. Scripts are currently in generation to go out to all of our voice actors. If I pop over to the correct place, I can even tell you what chapter we're up to with the scripts generation. 7 chapters are completely combed through for scripts for voice actors and for Foley work that will need to be done. And we've also got Storm Song has been press ganged into agreeing to do some music for this. So yes, there will be a audiobook later this year. Yeah, Hungry Like the Wolf was a fun time. It ended up being a surprisingly beneficial project, considering where we started and with just such a trash book. And I have had multiple DMs from people telling me off for making them actually like Alaric Ward because, surprise! The concept isn't that hard to write as somebody enjoyable. It's just that the current version of him isn't written that way, and then because of outside of in-character things, stupid decisions are made that then have to be attributed to the character archetype, and it's all very dumb. So yeah, I've had messages about that, and I also, I think it was 2-3 days ago, was having another long conversation with Tex about the state of modern romance. And basically, long story short, Real Housewives of Solaris 7 will happen at some point. It's definitely going to happen, and Tex is definitely going to be forced to edit it. Speaking of, before I get into reading stuff that we've done this week to you guys, because I mean, I'm on my own, so you're just going to get my random stream of consciousness. I'm very sorry. Would you like to see what else I've been working on this week, chat? Would you like a sneaky peeky or something coming soon? Yes, Concept Ed. I am planning on writing Real Housewives of Solaris 7 at some point. This has been a joke for about a year now. I haven't had time yet. And no, it's not poor Tex. Tex offered. At last year's meetup, he was like, I will copy edit your next romance book. So, it's not poor text. He volunteered. and he's going to be voluntold to uphold that if at all humanly possible. Okay, you guys would like to see what I've been working on. All right, let me bring up OBS and see if I can remember to click all of the correct buttons, not the wrong ones. So what should happen is if I click that and then click this, you guys should get to see the front page of one of the things I've been working on. Get your eyeballs on it quickly because it's going away again. Because shh, don't tell anyone. Don't tell anyone. All right, then we'll turn Scrivener back on. So that's what I've been doing this week. Tonk. Yes. There have been some tonks happening over the last few weeks, and things are coming together. And my bit is all finished. I have ticked it off. I've signed it off. People have said, yes, great, thank you. Everything's done. So I'm done on that project now, which means I can start cutting into all of the other things that I have to do. This will be funny, hearing Tex moan about the housewives. I mean, Tex has some very, very grounded opinions on the state of modern romance novels that very much align with my own, which is kind of why we end up having these conversations periodically. So as long as I write it to the way that I feel romance should be handled, there's every chance he might actually enjoy himself, which would be nice. All right, we are not here about romance this week. We are here about grief and sorrow and death and action and etc. Do I need to do a recap of where we were at last time we were here? Or was everybody here for last week's reading? I don't mind either way. I just don't want to bore people with a recap of things they already know. I know, obviously, Concept wasn't here last week, but we'll see what the rest of chat has to say, and that'll tell me how much recapping I need to do. As long as the housewives don't moan about Tex. They won't. But that said, I do have a commission piece I'm working on at the minute. I've finished the character line art for it. I've got to do the background over the course of this weekend. But I've got to draw ex-Mrs. Checkers, and that's been fun. That has been fun. The brief might as well have just said, you know, ultimate muscle mummy. I've enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed it. I have been pushing my understanding of female anatomy quite a lot to make her as big as she should be. Last week went like a crab race. Everything went sideways fast. Yes, that is a very, very true statement, Bully Snake. All right, so there's a couple of requests for a recap in chat, and obviously we have Concept with us. So we are currently writing our sort of pulp adventure novel on our setting that we spent so long building, and we have sent one human character and multiple native Shoaly characters to the city of Chorax, a long-dead ancient city buried beneath the waves that suffered from a bout of quiet/silence. Silence, with a P in front of it, is the word that we have for issues that cause the psionic coral of Shoal to go quiet and die, because everything on Shoaly is psionic. That's how everything works. Everybody is psionically able to talk to each other, which solves a lot of problems underwater, and it's how our titans, our mechs work. So Chorax had an outbreak of quiet, which are little caterpillar-like animals that cause silence, and the city was lost. Our characters have gone there to sort of do a investigation and see if they can find out any information that aren't already in the archives. And our characters have crawled through the city. They found interesting things. It's allowed us to explain the setting so that if anybody comes across this novel as their first introduction to Shoal, it allows them to understand the setting. They got underneath the city and they found an old lab where illegal research was being done that's much newer than the fall of the city. Unfortunately, there was one experiment that was still alive down there, and in killing the quiet, they accidentally woke up the experiment, which is 5 babies of a particular Leviathan species that there was thought to only be one of, because it was genetically engineered. Now there's 5 new ones that are just infused with quiet, which is a problem. Yes, the babies scream of the deeps. They got loose last week. They killed, I think, 3 characters total. They killed, well, no, more than that. They killed the 2 ceratinoid pirate guards out of the 4. They killed the psyoptic specialist, and then they also killed our library lead Mags and her library titan Echo. So we have 5 people dead. The majority of our heroes are currently hiding in a service corridor, and outside the service corridor is the surviving Titan Phalonic and his pilot, with a barrier of rubble between him and the main room where the babies were. That is where we left things off. People have died. Our child that's with the group, our little shark girl, Sivan, is currently very worried because she knows the babies are going to go for her village, and that was kind of where we finished. We had some powerful lines last week people seem to like. So that's good. And yeah, we're going to carry on from there this week. What I think I'm probably going to do, because I've had a long week and I'm frankly quite tired trying to finish off multiple projects, and I've got some rather important graphic design logo work to do before Sunday. I'm probably going to read through what we've got. If there's anything you guys would like to talk about, I will be very happy to do so, but otherwise, you know, if we get to an actual finishing point, we'll just be finished when we're finished. Yes, the joy of being a writer is you get to be a murderer and a matchmaker and a joy bringer, all depending on what you're writing at the time, and it could be quite fun. Especially if you're doing a little bit of spite writing. Spite writing can be very good for you. And I've said many times on this stream, my creative spark, my creative force that allows me to make things in the world is spite. I do 90% of what I do out of spite. And yeah, spite writing, where you're like, well, I need to write in a character and I know they're going to die horribly. It's part of the theming of the story and putting in actual stakes that make sense for the characters I want people to resonate with. I'm going to name them after this person I don't like. That's completely fine. You're allowed to do that. I mean, there are some caveats attached to that, but for the most part, you know, you can just use a pseudonym or whatever, and it's great. Spite writing is fantastic. There is a reason why writers are advised to kill their darlings. Yes, but you can go too far. You can go too far. And for me, in some ways, this is going to be a controversial statement, and I totally understand why people will have the opposite opinion. But for me, I feel like George R.R. Martin sometimes goes too far the wrong way. and takes it just a little bit too far. Whereas, now bearing in mind, I have not read the entirety of the Gaunt's Ghost series, but up to the point where I had read it, Dan Abnett was somebody I felt was quite good at killing off characters and actually making it meaningful. As he went through things for the sake of a story that made sense. There's been some powerful moments in that series that, yeah, if you're going to kill a character off, there's definitely some inspiration I've taken from Dan Abnett in killing characters off meaningfully. That hopefully comes through. Aegon Sorek is probably one of my favourite sad character stories I've ever read. Especially as it wasn't, like the main driving force of the stories that he appeared in. It was just part of what was going on, which was partly what made it good. But yeah, sometimes you should kill your darlings. Sometimes it's okay to let them live, though, and let chat have nice things. Cookie Mama says, J.R.R. Martin, Joss Whedon, and Stephen Moffat walk into the bar. Everybody dies. And those are all three of those are people who there are positive things I can say about their writing and places where I think they've had negatives and fallen down, which is part of what makes them worthwhile people to talk about, because that's very human. Nobody gets it right every time, all the time. But when you do get it right, if it really resonates with people at whatever time and place that might be, that's a great thing. That is a great thing and should absolutely be celebrated. And times where there are missteps, that's not necessarily a negative thing. It's a human thing. Concept says there's a difference between killing a character for a good, powerful reason and killing a character for the "oh no" value. Yes, and one of those will feel more disingenuous, especially if you do it more than once. And once things start feeling disingenuous, people aren't having as good a time as they could be, and that's your space for improvement. Things should mean things. There you go. I said it. I haven't said it for weeks, but we said it. Things should mean things in books. Nothing is there just for the sake of it. It has to be there for a reason. As a constructive narrative. Oh, and we have a follow from, is that Essenic? I apologise if I am pronouncing that horribly. I am terrible with names. But thank you for following. I hope you have a good time. Alrighty, shall we move on to some reading for this week and see where we end up? Concept says a game that I play has definitely managed to do both. It's killed 3 characters well and about half a dozen for absolutely no reason, and also not killed a character who 100% should have died. Yeah, and if you're pulling that out, they can pull you out of the narrative, because ultimately one of the things you're trying to do with a piece of media is you're trying to get the person interacting with it to suspend their disbelief. So that they can engage with the thing and, sort of enjoy and be part of the world that you have created, whether it's a video game, whether it's a novel, a stage play, whatever it is. You're sort of giving people permission to not have to be themselves and just engage with this narrow constructed world for a while. And when you've got stuff like that, it pulls you back into the real world, because you're doing what humans do. You're noticing a pattern, and it's a pattern that isn't rewarding you. So your brain starts doing things that the creator probably didn't intend to happen, and it draws you out of the thing, and that's sad. That's not what we want. Who are we killing? We killed multiple people last week. This week we are not killing people. We are coping with the fallout of killing people last time. We killed Mags and Echo and Oscar and Rune and the psyoptic specialist Varin last week. Silicon Soul, no stabbing anybody on stream. You'll get blood all over the carpet, and I don't have enough bleach left. I'm sorry. Alrighty. Let's move into Shoal for this week. I am going to move chat over here so I can see you guys in my periphery while I'm reading. And I'm going to click on Shoal, and we're going to move down to chapter 16. I think we've caught up to where we were, and let's see what you guys think of the nonsense I've been doing in the time since. Chapter 16. For a while, nobody moved. The corridor held them the way a clenched fist held water. Old stone pressed close on either side. The ceiling above had not fallen, but it complained in low, granular shifts that made everyone look up each time silt trickled from a seam. The only light came from soot lamps, emergency beacons, and the cold blue glow of the closed inner door behind them. Beyond that door was Felonic. Beyond Felonic was the rubble. Beyond the rubble was the chamber where Echo had died. One of Jabra's remaining security crew was making a sound through her clenched mandibles that Jake did not recognise at first. Then Kilo, with a quiet gravitas, supplied the context silently through his implant, for his ears only. I added an extra word in there. There we go. Sarah vocal pattern. Suppressed grief response. Jabra stood very still near the centre of the corridor. Two of her people were gone. Rune. Oscar. The names moved through Jake's mind like stones dropped into deep water, sinking before he could grab them. From what he knew from Ceratinoid culture, there was every chance they had been either clutchmates or her own offspring. Varen was gone too. Magarel was gone. Echo was gone, her frame pinned under stone. Data package in secondary core. Main memory intact. He could still hear the last broken fragment of Mags's voice. Do not attempt retrieval until safe. Jake almost laughed. It came up his throat as something sharp and ugly and died behind his teeth. Nothing was safe. The corridor smelled like panic, even through his suit filters. It should not have. He was sealed away from the water, and sealed away from all of them, locked inside layers of alloy, polymer, pressure gel, and human survival engineering. But his brain filled in the details anyway. Blood in water, burnt circuitry, broken stone. Fear, at least. Fear had a smell anywhere. Sivan shook against his side. Jake had not realised he still had one exo-arm half curled around her until Kilo quietly adjusted the pressure readings along his forearm and sent him a warning. Your grip is safe. Do not tighten. He loosened at once. Sivan did not seem to notice. She had folded down close to the corridor floor, tail wrapped in on itself, Susella hugged up to her face. Her eyes were fixed on the sealed door. Not blinking, not crying. Jake did not know if Archaea children cried in any way he would recognise. Her shroud felt like something too thin stretched over a hole. My village, she whispered. It was the second time she had said it. Still, Jake had no useful answer to give her. Nothing that wasn't a clear, false platitude. Umi moved first. He'd been braced against the wall, one upper hand pressed flat to the stone as if he could feel through it to the ruin beyond. His colours were tight and dark. His shroud, usually so broad Jake thought of it as surf, had drawn in hard around him, wounded and controlled. At Sivan's words, he pushed away from the wall and came to her. Not fast, not with a counsellor's theatrical softness. He simply descended until his large latical body was low enough that he was not looming over her. Two of his hands opened, palm up, in a gesture Jake had seen before in Songgorge, when strangers approached frightened children. I see you, Umi said. The translator caught the words and rendered them too simply. The shroud did the rest. Recognition, grief, permission not to be brave. Sivan's mouth worked. For a moment, nothing came out. Then everything did. They were eaten, she said. They were alive, and then they were not alive. Rune was there, and then he was in pieces. Max was speaking, and then she... Echo went dark. The old one went dark. They broke the door. They're going outside. My father said not to come here. He said not to come here. My village is closest. Her voice cracked on the last word. Jake's suit translated the sound as distress. It didn't need to bother. Umi rested one hand on the floor in front of her, close enough to offer contact, not close enough to demand it. You've seen death today. Sivan made a tiny, furious motion with her head. I've seen dead things. Yes, Umi said. That is not the same. I didn't know, she said. No. I thought I did. Yes. The simplicity of that almost undid Jake. He'd expected wisdom, maybe, or reassurance, or the careful lie adults built when children were too young for the truth. Umi gave her none of that. He gave her the awful dignity of being believed. Sivan's shroud shuddered. Then she reached out with one shaking hand and touched Umi's offered palm. Not even held it, just touched. That should be one shaking fin, because Arkir do not have hands. Umi's shroud folded around hers, not enclosing, not smothering. A harbour wall again. Less command this time, more weather break. "They'll go to my village," she whispered. Jabra answered, "Yes." Every head turned toward her. The word had been brutal. Not cruel. Brutal in the way a sealed hatch was brutal. A fact that didn't care whether you were ready to hear it. Sivan stared. Jabra's eyes lowered towards the girl. Her claws flexed once, then stilled. "Not this breath, not the next. They have siphon rays to kill first, and they're young enough to be stupid with hunger. But when the city is empty of meat, they will hunt farther." Sivan's shroud trembled against Umi's. Jabra's voice dropped half a register. "Better you know the shape of the teeth coming towards you." "Jabra," Talia said softly. "What?" Jabra snapped. "Truth does not become safe because we wrap gentle weed around it." "She is a child." "And Chorax does not care." Silence struck again. Jabra looked away first. Not ashamed, not quite, but something in her folded inward. One claw drifted to the old token she wore tucked against her harness. The Tide Warden core piece, smooth from years of being rubbed in anger or grief or thought. Her claw closed around it. Umi kept his hand with Sivan. "Jabra is right," he said. Talia's mantle flickered in alarm. Umi looked up. "She's not gentle, but she is right." No one liked that either. A muffled impact rolled through the rubble wall beyond the door. Everyone flinched. Not because it was close, because it was not close enough to understand. Phalonic's voice came through the comms a moment later, distorted by stone in the closed corridor barrier. "External contact distant. Multiple large bodies in the lower chamber. No immediate pressure against my position." Hodaka spoke after him. His voice sounded stripped down to the bone. "I can still hold here." Umi's eyes closed briefly. "You should not have to." "I can," Hodaka said. No one argued with that wording. Jake shifted, forcing his suit's legs under him properly. His balance system wanted him upright. His body wanted him curled on the floor with Sivan, possibly forever. "Kilo," he said quietly. "Suit integrity?" "Pressure system stable," she answered at once. "Outer plating scored. Left shoulder impact damage. Right calf thruster misaligned by 6 degrees but operational. Active oxygen reserve sufficient. Your pulse is elevated, but I am classifying that as sensible." He breathed once, twice. His hands were shaking inside the suit. Nobody could see that. He hated and loved the suit for it. Talia had drawn herself near the left wall with a slate open between her hands. Not because she was calm. Because when terror had nowhere to go, she put it into data. Her colours still flickered in short bursts, but her voice, when it came, had recovered enough shape to be useful. "Echo said juvenile resonance," she said. "Probable juvenile resonance." Umi did not answer. "She identified them as Scream of the Deep," Talia continued. "But the depth register did not match." "Because they are young," Jabra said. "Maybe," Talia said. "Or because they're not the same organism. Or because they are and modified differently. Or because the quiet they are carrying alters the acoustic profile." "The quiet they are shedding," Jake said. Talia looked at him. He regretted speaking for approximately 1 second, and then the words pushed on without permission. "I saw one shaking it off. The little colonies. The silk was breaking and it was pulling the clusters in. You said the quiet should need something to sustain it. What if they were the sustaining system? Or the quiet was the containment system? Or both?" "I think both," Talia said. That landed badly. Umi's shroud shifted, dark and slow. "Talia," he said. "How many did you count?" She hesitated. Jake knew then that she had already counted, probably several times. 5, she said. 5 distinct juvenile bodies visible before rupture. I cannot guarantee there were not more inside the unit. Sivan made a small sound. Jabra's grip tightened around the token. 5, she said. The word was almost admiring in its horror. Umi lowered his head. For the first time since Jake had known him, the counsellor looked old. Not physically. Umi was strong, broad-bodied, vital, but something in his expression had dropped past profession and personal grief into archive memory, into the weight of being one of the people who had read too much to believe disaster was ever unique. There should be one, Umi said. No one spoke. Even the stones seemed to listen. Now I'm going to have a little catch up with chat before I carry on. Because we're about to get into story time. So let's see what you guys have been saying while I've been wittering on. Grimos is on a massive streak. Oh my goodness. Okay, where were we? We can always get more bleach. No, just no, less need for bleach, please. No stabbing people. Parallax says, I've torn down my painting streaming space. Slight renovation to be done next week. Replacing an ancient set of windows in my office. Good luck. May that go smoothly. All right, Ed is giving me some editorial notes. The NIST suits that it needs to adjust the suit's inputs, not Kilo. Not that it would prevent Kilo from making the comment. Okay, let me go back to where that was happening and we can fill that in. And I know I haven't given Talia her stutter in this. I was just focused on getting the words out this week. I do have my editing note about that. So I think I saw somebody mentioning it while I was reading. Talia's voice does need adjusting. Okay, let's see. All right, I don't think I'm going to find it easily. Blah, 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 blah. I will make a note on my editing page. Okay, this is where we should be at. All right, let me come up to here and we will make some notes down here. Blah, 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 blah. The NIS system should be what adjusts Jake's suit. Kilo can comment on it, but it's unlikely she is responsible. That's what the NIS system is for. There we go. There's that note made. All right, let's change this back over to our map. Boop. All right, and bring chat back up and see what else you guys have been saying. For what I'm paying for it ought to go smoothly. I mean, that doesn't always solve things. We're still waiting on our fence to go up because planning office is being difficult. Yeah, we are going to get together about the practicalities of the suit at some point, Ed. At the minute, my focus with this is to just get the rest of our rough draft all done. Then in editing, there's just going to be a massive wall of editing things that have to happen, and some of that's going to involve talking to key people who invented parts of the setting or whose ideas helped to build it. Other parts are just going to be me going through and going mad in the corner and dribbling to myself as I try to reconcile how I've put this together. Do look forward to it because we'll make it fun. I'm not going to make anybody do any of the menial boring stuff, I promise. I don't want to force that on anybody, especially for people who have discovered some of the joy of writing through this stream and are beginning to do things. I don't want to put those people off with the nitty-gritty of editing because editing is hard. It can get very monotonous and tedious and it uses up a lot of brain power. In a couple of hours, I can bash out multiple thousands of words without thinking about it because that's kind of the fun bit. You know, you're getting the words down and what's going to happen and etc, etc, etc. And then you get to the editing phase and it will take a day to edit 2 chapters if you're editing it all the way down to be proper and finished. And you will be exhausted as if you've done a week's worth of work by the end of it. But it has to be done. Editing is it's critical. It's absolutely critical to the process. And we mentioned Hungry Like the Wolf earlier on today, and that's one of the problems Hungry Like the Wolf has. It possibly had one editor go through it once, which explains why some of the prose is not good, why there's inconsistencies. And when they sent it to print, clearly no editor or quality control person looked at the product before approving the whole run, because we have a chapter where the C in chapter at the top is lowercase. We have a paragraph that moves down to a new line in the middle of a sentence. We have a section where the font is justified compared to the rest of the book, which isn't, or it's left aligned and the rest of the book is justified, one of the two. And it's just these little things that stand out, and they pull you out of, I mean, it's hard to stay in the original book anyway because it's just bad. It's not enjoyable. It's painful to read. But when you then add on top of that physical editing mistakes, not just prose and content, it just makes things a slog to read. So you have to edit. You absolutely have to edit. Do not worry about ripping up nice prose. Nice prose is easy to put together. I want as many noobs as possible to be involved in the creative things we do on stream when there's space for that to happen, because writing is a phenomenal thing. Storytelling is a phenomenal thing, and it's one of the things that makes human beings so unique in the world. The ability to write down an idea that you've had in your head, especially if it's an idea that's not based on reality, something that you've invented and made up and problem solved and justified, and written that down to share with another human being, and they can understand in the black space behind their eyes the exact thing you were experiencing in yours. That is magic. That is absolutely magic. And when you then get other people involved in the creation of that thing, and ideas that you might not have had yourself come in and give a whole new level of sort of flowering and growth that could happen that might not if it was just you, that's also a kind of magic and important for human connection and meaning in life, and etc, etc. So community writing is very important to me. I love writing my own novels. I love writing my own works. I love being left alone in my little gremlin cave to work on complete nonsense that is meaningful to me and that I hope might be meaningful to other people. But there's a different kind of joy that comes from letting other people into your world and bouncing ideas off of each other and growing and changing as part of that experience. There are elements of Shoal that absolutely would not exist if I'd done it on my own, and the way Shoal feels would have been different if I'd worked on it on my own, because I'm not good at hard science. Yes, I do love being left alone in my gremlin cave. Thank you, Night Owl. There's elements of hard science that I just struggle with. I don't find it as enjoyable. I don't hold the information as easily as I hold other information in my head that's just there. And it takes a lot more research and thinking. And it becomes to the point where it feels a little bit tedious and boring to me, purely because of how my brain works, not because the topic is tedious and boring, but because my brain just doesn't work with that kind of information as easily as it does with others. So, you know, my default is to go to the stuff I know better. So I think if Shoal had been left in my hands, it would have had this sort of more, we would have lent more into the fantasy elements, and not quite as much of some of the hard science that we brought in. Obviously, there's degrees of soft science going on in this setting, because there has to be. There's degrees of fantasy that we've built into it, because there has to be for the sort of thing we chose to build. But all of the areas where we have that harder science brushing up against it and defining parts of the world, that only exists because of all of the hard work that you guys have put in, and not just Ed. Many of you have put in those thoughts and bits, and it's come from all different areas, whether it's people who are really good with things like the suit, whether it was to do with establishing the space around Shoal and how that affects things like our radiation belts, how our orbiting works, because Ninja Turtle did us that wonderful animation at the beginning of us beginning to build the setting that showed our system that we designed with Lunastra at the center. Sorry, let me get this the right way around. Mern is our star, Luastra, not Lunastra, that's Monster Hunter, as our gas giant that our moon is orbiting. And, you know, we decided to do something quite complicated. And the easiest thing to have done would have been to say, oh, yeah, it's a moon orbiting a gas giant. And we're just not going to think about that science. But you guys did, and we realized some of what that hard science would do to the world and then built those elements in, and it's great. So yes, communal work is wonderful, and I'm really glad you guys have been involved, and things needing to be ripped up so that they're consistent and work well, and I'm fine with that. That will be part of the editing process that will be enjoyable. Spelling and grammar will be less so. The mix of fantasy and hard science is sort of the perfect line for an interesting story. You could make the argument that both Star Wars and Dune do it. If you do it well, it's amazing. Yeah, and there's absolutely space in the world for just pure hard science stories as well. Those could be great and will appeal to a certain kind of person who really enjoys that. And a lot of that hard science what-ifism is what's helped to drive our technology in the real world today. So that could be really great. And of course, fantasy books have been eternally popular since the genre first came into being. There's a place for everything. It's just finding what works for the specific thing that you're creating, the audience you intend it for, and the sort of messages that you want to deliver. Chocobo has redeemed a water break. I will hail hydrate. Thank you. Lord Trower, that does not count as a proper beverage break. That is a crime in a cup. How could you? You have sinned once again. Alrighty, shall we carry on reading? Are we ready for story time with Umi, where he is going to talk about the original Scream of the Deep and not the babies? Anka, my drink is not for you. I love you very much, baby girl. Have you come to see what I'm doing? Doing stuff with chat. Yeah, I am. She's head tilting at you, chat. Oh god, I got booped in the nose. Hi, can you lay down? I would like to read to chat. Can I read to chat? I'm afraid we have been invaded by dog. Dog has occurred. One of 3 dog has occurred. Can I do the thing now? You're gonna have to get... No. You're going to have to get down. This is very inconvenient. You make an excellent door, but not a very good window. I cannot see through you. Come on. Thank you. Yes, you can go up there. That's fine. Sit up behind my neck. Bully Snake says, could be worse. I don't heat my tea at all. I'm not honestly sure which is worse. Cold tea or microwave heated tea. Both of these things concern me on a very deep British level. 7Blue7 says, I do all sorts of heretical things to tea, plus the traditional electric kettle, just as long as it's tasty. Anka objects. Anka thinks you should not do crime to tea. This is not me saying it, it's Anka. Please hold, a beagling is a happening. There we go. That required some shouting. Alright, let's see what else you guys saying. Iced tea. Terrible people. Terrible. Better than microwave tea, I guess. Anka 7Blue7 says you're a good girl and a blessing. I'm not sure I agree right now. What does Lady Red think of southern sweet tea or unsweetened tea? I don't. I refuse to accept it exists. Deliberate ignorance is to my benefit. It's going to be one of those streams. Please hold. A beagling is happening. There we go. Concept says, it's a well-known false fact that the Great Wall is the only human-made structure visible from space. It is a lesser-known fact, but very true, that beagles are the only thing audible from space. Yes, and I have 3 of them. You can imagine what that sounds like in the morning when they decide they need their breakfast. Alrighty, let's carry on reading. I will never get through all of this week. Alright, story time with Umi. There is only one scream of the deep, Umi said. One known, one recorded, one living mistake. Talia's colours dimmed. Hodaka, Umi said through the channel. Can you hear this clearly? Yes, came the answer from behind the door. Then listen too. Umi's hand remained near Sivan's, but his gaze moved to the rest of them. The original organism was not born as itself. It began as a chirping end note, large enough to trouble nets and frighten careless swimmers. Beautiful, by most accounts, social, responsive, capable of astonishing acoustic range. Not harmless, but no leviathan is harmless. It sang in a register many surely found pleasant, almost playful. His mouth tightened. Then it was altered. Jake felt Kilo go very still on his shoulder. Atsulean? Talia asked. By a faction that should not have had resources, permission, or conscience enough to do what they did, Umi said. Names shift across the records. Blame was assigned, contested, sealed, reopened, and sealed again. But the work was real. The same work as here, Talia murmured. Maybe the parent of it. Umi's shroud deepened. They made a thing that could weaponize the abyss. Pressure, hunger, distance, sound. It grew past every prediction. It learned faster than the handlers expected. It ate more than they could provide. Then it left the waters where it was made. Jabra's claw rubbed over the token in slow circles. Umi's voice turned quieter. There is a tale from the old days. It's probably exaggerated. Most tales that survive long enough to become warnings are. But in the story, Scream of the Deep came upon a Goliath herd during their slow migration across the South Middle Trench Line. It killed the first Goliath by driving sound through its skull until the great creature turned blind and bit through its own tongue. It killed the second by opening its belly from beneath and feeding while the herd sang panic around it. The third, it did not kill quickly. It followed for 2 days. Sivan's hand tightened against his. That should be... that will need changing. That doesn't make sense. Change this. She has Susala, not hands. Umi did not look away from the group. A migratory fleet was travelling above that trench line, one whose name no longer sits in ordinary memory. The fleet heard the Goliaths screaming and descended to harvest, to help, to witness. Records disagree. Scream of the Deep followed the dying upward. Talia closed her eyes. It collapsed the fleet? Jake asked. No, Umi said. That is the tale. That it rose under them and screamed so powerfully their coral cracked, their titans went mad, their shrouds collapsed, and the city folded like a net cut from all sides. That's not what happened? We don't know. The fleet is gone. Its archive never reached a library. It might not even have ever existed. Some debris was found. Some survivors gave accounts that contradict each other in ways that sound like trauma or politics. But the resulting legend has lurked in Temps coral for centuries. A travelling city died. The scream fed on the dead wake for 6 days. The corridor seemed smaller after that. Jake thought of Gleamwake. He didn't want to. He thought of it anyway. All that mass and life moving above the region. Families, markets, engines, children, all of them passing within reach in a few days because the expedition had been supposed to rendezvous again. Eventually, Umi said. It grew too large to contain, too costly to hunt directly, and too dangerous to let wander settled currents. So it was driven south. Sonar curtains, active pulses, old military arrays. Cruel sound. Illegal sound now. They drove it towards the southern polar waters, where there was less traffic, fewer cities, and more abyssal range. It did not die. It simply became a fact sane people avoided. It haunts the Stormlance Sea now. Huge, solitary, no less dangerous. The Ancient One does not carry quiet, Talia said. No, Umi said. Not in any record I've seen. These do, she said. Yes. Jake heard himself breathe. His suit flexed. In it sat a human body that had no business being here and had somehow become relevant in the worst possible way. He glanced at the ping icon on his HUD and cleared his throat. My suit has active sonar, he said. Everyone looked at him. The focus of Shoaly attention was never comfortable. In that corridor, after that story, it felt like stepping into a beam of light at the bottom of the sea. Jake lifted one hand slightly. I mean, I haven't used it. I know what active sonar does down here. The pulse is artificial, hard-edged. Not like natural echolocation. Not like your own sound sense. I was told very clearly not to ping things unless it was life or death. Jabra's mandibles moved. This qualifies. Probably, Jake said. His mouth was very dry. But it's not a military array. It's a navigation and hazard mapping system for a human pressure suit. Strong, yes, because humans are blind bricks down here, but nowhere near what Umi's talking about. Could it hurt them? Talia asked. The babies? Jake asked. Maybe. More likely scare or disorient them if they're close. Maybe drive them off for a little while. Maybe just make them angry, I don't know. It will hurt us, Umi said. Jake nodded. That was the important part. The part that made the idea feel dirty even before it became useful. It will hurt you, he said. All of you. I can tune spread and direction somewhat, but in a corridor, in enclosed stone, with water-carrying reflections everywhere... He shook his head. It would be ugly. How ugly? Jabra asked. Pain? Disorientation? Shroud disruption, maybe, if the pulse couples badly. Kilo? Kilo answered immediately. Based on local species medical files and suit emitter specifications, I predict significant distress in all Shoaly within effective radius. Potential temporary sensory impairment. Elevated risk to juveniles, psyoptics, wounded individuals, and any pilot deep in Titan communion. Hodaka gave a weak, humourless laugh over the channel. Lovely. I am not recommending casual use, Kilo said. No one thinks you are, Jake murmured. Umi's expression had changed. Not hope, not relief. A calculation he did not want to make. It is an option, he said. It is a last option, Jake said quickly. Yes, very last. Yes, Jake. And I'm not using it unless everyone understands what it will do. Jabra's eye stalks narrowed. If those things come down this corridor, you use it. Jake looked at Umi. Umi looked back, then he nodded once. If they come through, he said, we endure the sound. No one argued. That was not agreement exactly. It was survival beginning to assemble itself from the wreckage. Talia rubbed both hands over her face, then looked at Umi. That should be 2 tendrils over her face, because she has many hands. What are our next steps? Umi did not answer her. He turned to Jabra. Captain, he said. Assess. Talia's mantle flashed in surprise. Jabra? Jabra looked surprised too, though she buried it almost instantly under suspicion. That a complaint, science girl? No, Talia said. Hodaka is a Tide Warden. Umi was a Tide Warden. Hodaka said nothing from beyond the door. Umi's shroud closed by a fraction, not with shame, but with the reflex of old pain being touched. I was, he said. Talia's colours softened at once. I did not mean... I know. Umi looked towards the sealed door. Hodaka is young. Folonic is young. They are brave, trained, and more powerful than any of us in a straight line of force. I hear that, Hodaka said faintly. But this is not a warden problem, Umi continued. Not anymore. Wardens protect routes, cities, borders, civic life. They answer both known threats with known doctrine. This is wild edge work, deep current work, unpredictable predators, illegal ghosts, failed maps. His eyes moved to Jabra. The sort of thing one sends Leviathan hunters for, he said, if one has time. Or the sort of thing survived by pirates who spent their lives crossing waters, everyone respectable marked forbidden. Jabra stared at him. Then very slowly, she smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was not even a happy one, but there was life in it. Teeth, if ceratinoid smiles counted as teeth. A brutal little ember under all the blood. Her claw rubbed the old Tidewarden token once, almost fondly. Well, she said, finally, someone remembers what my resume is for. Assess, Umi repeated. Jabra's smile vanished. She turned toward the sealed door, toward Folonic beyond it, toward the dead room beyond him and the city beyond that. None of us are safe to leave yet, she said. Sivan made a tiny sound. Jabra glanced at her, then continued more carefully, which for Jabra meant less like a blade and more like a knife offered handle first. I do not mean we stay here forever, little Sharptooth. I mean leaving at the wrong time kills more people than staying afraid for another hour. Sivan swallowed. Jabra pointed one claw towards the rubble. Those babies are hungry. They woke in a tank after generations, maybe centuries, with nothing but quiet around them. They're carrying quiet, eating quiet, shedding quiet, and screaming loud enough to wake every siphon ray in Chorax. For now, that's good. Good, Jake said. Good, because siphon rays are meat and fight. The babies are distracted. But the siphon rays are not endless. Once the city stops bleeding, the babies go looking. Closest village is Sivan's. Sivan's shroud pinched small. Umi's hand steadied under hers. After that, Jabra continued, whatever settlement sits in reach. Hunting parties, archive routes. Then Gleamwake when it passes overhead, fat and loud and full of mines. Talia's voice was barely audible. It cannot reach Gleamwake. Why not? No one answered. Jabra's claw opened. These are juvenile Scream in the Deep. 5 of them. Maybe only 5, maybe not. We just watched them tear siphon rays apart. The old one did not carry quiet. These do. If they scatter that silk, those colonies, whatever has been living with them in that tank, every place they feed could start going silent. They might not spread viable quiet, Talia said, but the argument sounded weak even as she made it. Might is not a plan, Jabra said. If they grow, if they breed, if the quiet grows with them, then this is not a village problem. It's not a library problem. It's not even a Chorax problem. She looked at Umi. It's a world-ending problem. The corridor accepted the words without drama. That made them worse. Jake felt, suddenly, absurdly, that he missed 10 minutes ago, when his main emotional state had been horror. Horror was simple. Horror was being alive in a place where people had died. This was responsibility. Responsibility had teeth that stayed hooked in. We have to kill them, Hodaka said. The young pilot's voice was flat and stunned, as if he had walked into the sentence and found it waiting in his own mouth. Jabra nodded. Yes. With what? Talia asked. Information first, Jabra said. Then weapons. Information is inside Echo, Umi said. Yes. Jabra's claw tightened around the token again. Mags told us. Secondary core, data package secured, main memory intact. Echo was processing the dead and the scientist's notes. The one who knew what they were doing down here, or knew enough to hate it, and everything we were seeing in that room before containment failed. The core is behind the sample hold, Talia said, thinking aloud now. Central mass. Echo's outer body is pinned, but if the chamber did not crush the full interior... Can we reach it? Jake asked. Jabra gave him a look. That is the question. The larger question, Kilo added, is whether reaching it will allow you to extract useful data without Echo's full interpretive systems, Magarel's credentials, or proper library tools. Jabra's gaze flicked to the turtle on Jake's shoulder. Thank you, cheerful machine. You are welcome, abrasive crab. Jake closed his eyes for half a second and focused on breathing, and not thinking about what it would mean to try and take anything from a dead Titan. Right, let's have a catch up with chat before I carry on, as it lets me have a drink. Concept says on purpose? You have 3 beagles on purpose? Yes, I do. Our first beagle landed in our lives out of nowhere. And changed everything in just the most wonderful way. She is my little angel. She is our empress. And when she was 2 years old, she had a false pregnancy and she just so wanted a companion and babies. So we went and got her a boyfriend. We travelled all the way from Florida to Texas to get her Pip, who is her boyfriend, to make sure that they were a good match and that we were getting from an ethical breeder. We got to see the entire operation. It was wonderful. We brought Pip home. And then not this Christmas just gone, but the Christmas before, they had their first litter of puppies. And it will be their only litter of puppies because, unfortunately, Ceres needed assistance with the birth. And after that's happened, it's not really a good thing to try and breed them again. So we had her neutered at that point. But she had 3 beautiful babies. She had two girls and a boy. The boy, Virgil, has stayed in Florida with his forever family. One of the girls, Lupa, went to the ranch that her dad came from to continue the breeding line. And then the third baby, Anka, stayed with us. And we will breed Anka in a year or 2 when she is ready. And then we will have 4 beagles because we'll keep one of those puppies as well. So yes, I have 3 beagles on purpose. Ed says, on Screams of the Deep description, it would be a great time to reference Shoaly aspects. Yeah, I can make a note to maybe add in some aspect language there. What we'll need to do in the editing process is, if we add that in when we read it back, is see if it just sounds like exposition for the sake of exposition. But if it doesn't, then yeah, we can absolutely keep it in there. Let me make a note up here. Add in aspect work to section where Umi talking about Scream of the Deep. And I've hit caps lock for no good reason. That's fine. All right, back down here. All right, what else has chat had to say? All right, what else do we have? Titan Communion should be concordance. Yes. Oh, was it Kilo saying that? Because I think I deliberately, if that's the line, I think I made the deliberate decision to have her not use that word because Umi is going to use it in a couple of minutes with regards to something that's very, very deliberately to that. So I wanted that softness. But again, in editing, that's something we can change if we need to. And if it wasn't Kilo who said it, then you're right. It absolutely needs changing. Are we pluralizing it Screams of the Deep? I think that makes more sense than Scream of the Deeps, because then it gets confusing. Orcslayer says, love abrasive clam. That was a great line. I'm glad you guys liked it. I figured we needed a little quip. It had been a while. We've had some stress. 7Blue7 says, my friend's beagles ate his whole summer garden except the carrots. They have yet to learn to dig them up. I am dreading similar issues with our beagles because once we get our yard fenced in, I do want to try and grow stuff in it. And yeah, teaching them what they're allowed on and what they're not is going to be a time. A beagle never shows up out of nowhere. Well, this one did. When we got Ceres, sorry to anybody who knows this story already, but when we got Ceres, We were in Florida because Iden has historically been military, so we've moved around a lot. And we were planning the year that we got Ceres, we were planning to get a puppy at Christmas that year. And we were going to get a Sheltie or a Swedish Valhund. Because herding dogs are what I've had my whole life, and that was what we wanted. And we thought Christmas would be the right time because that's when we would be ready. And, you know, we knew what was going to be happening with his career going forward. It would be time. And then he went into work one day in, like, was it March or May? It was much earlier in the year. I think it was March. He went into work in March, and one of his colleagues was showing off a puppy picture because his son had adopted a dog that he just was not ready for, against the advice of everybody sensible in his life, had realised the hard way that he was not prepared to take care of this puppy and it needed a new home. And the dog was being given away for free because, you know, this was sort of part of the young man learning a lesson. And so the dad didn't want it to go to a shelter, so he was seeing if anybody was interested in a puppy. So I get a message from Iden with, hey, so I know we were planning on getting a dog later in the year, and, you know, we were talking about Valhunds and Shelties, but there's a beagle puppy that needs a home. And I was like, well, beagles are very loud, and they're stubborn, and they're prone to ear infections, and they're very energetic dogs. I'm not sure if it's a good fit. And then he sent me her baby photo, and she came home that night. And I adore her in every way. No. That's Ceres in the bath, and that was one of my pictures. That was one of the first pictures I took once she came home to us. Ceres was being given away by a very adorable puppy picture of her sitting on a kitchen floor, just looking cute as anything. Absolutely just cute as a button. And yeah, we went and picked her up that night, and she just poured herself into my arms. She had already decided we were going to be her humans, and she immediately went to sleep on my lap in the car on the drive home with her head on Iden's offhand while he drove. And yeah, she has been our angel ever since. It took her a couple of days to find her voice once we brought her home because she'd been through a lot of change. And then she found her voice and that she could hide under the couch and just yell at us and be a couch gremlin. And yeah, she became the Ceres that we all know and love today. And we loved her so much, and her little personality and the way that she is. We were like, her line needs to continue. She wants a boyfriend. We want some part of her to survive past her because she is just the best dog. And yeah, now we have 3 beagles. We have all of the beagles. I am petting Anka because she's the one currently laying on my hip. She is laying on her back with all her paws in the air, and I'm giving her chest scratches. Yes, the advantages of driving an automatic. Yes, giving your new puppy comfort and the shape of home. But yeah, we got her for free technically because of circumstances, and I'm very grateful. She kind of fell into our laps by accident. Good girl. Oh, are you enjoying all the pets? So you need to say thank you to chat. This is from chat, not from me. I'm horrible, remember? I'm the mean mama that yells at you because you're shouting at things that you shouldn't be shouting at. Yeah. Oh, stop being cute. Stop being cute. Alrighty. Oh. It says, in general, I feel like we should look for opportunities to integrate surely religious influences and Eric's work where appropriate. I agree, and if we don't get massive spaces to fit it into this book, because this book is trying to carry a lot, there's a lot of short stories I would like to write that definitely pay homage to that, because I think there's a lot of... because there are so many aspects that are so clear in certain ways, I feel like in themselves they drive storytelling. So there's definitely some stories I want to tell there, and then if we don't get enough in this book, whatever book we plan to do next, we can certainly make sure that that's a much larger facet, especially as we won't have to explain the world as much anymore because we've already done that with this first novel. So the physicalities of the world won't be as important to explain anymore. We can focus more on the culture and religion and all of that coming through in a living city. rather than the brief, sort of visit to Song Gorge and Gleamwake that we've had. But certainly, if there are good places we can fit it in here, I completely agree with you. But making sure that all gets its full attention, I think, is also going to require future books as well. Alrighty, I've had a drink, we've witted a bit. I will continue reading. Umi cleared his throat. We do not need all of Echo, not at first. We need the package Magarel secured. We need the scientist's records. We need whatever Echo saw in those juveniles before she died. Died? Sivan whispered. Umi looked back down at her. The corridor went still around that small word. She's dead? Sivan asked. Echo is dead? No one answered quickly enough again. Sivan's eyes filled with something that might have been tears after all, or just the body's helpless answer to too much. But she was old. Yes, Umi said. She was library. Yes. She was too big. That last one broke. Umi's shroud opened, wounded and warm. Nothing is too big to die, child, and no one is too small to not matter. That is life. Sivan's face crumpled. She pressed both her forefins flat and shook with the force of not making more sound. Jake wanted to say something. Anything. Some human phrase from funerals or hospitals or the 1,000 tiny rituals of being alive around death. I'm sorry. She saved us. It wasn't your fault. She was brave. They were all true and all useless, and he hated them for it. Jabra spared him the attempt. She held the door, Jabra said. Sivan looked at her. Jabra's voice was rough. There are deaths where you are taken. There are deaths where you spend yourself. Echo and Mags spent themselves. Expensive, deliberate, cleanly done. That is comfort? Talia asked very softly. Jabra did not look away from Sivan. It's the kind I know. Sivan stared at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Once. Small. Umi's gaze lingered on Jabra, unreadable. Then he straightened. The motion changed the corridor. Not dramatically, no great flare of shroud, no command voice, no Titan's thunder. But Umi gathered himself from counsellor, from grieving friend, from former warden with old burn scars at his temples, and became the person the expedition still had. We need 3 things, he said. We need to confirm the chamber state. We need to reach Phalonik and assess him and Hordaka in person. We need to plan entry to Echo's core. 4 things, Jabra said. Umi inclined his head. We need to decide what to do with the child. I am not leaving, Sivan said instantly. No, there's nowhere for you to go safely alone, Jabra replied. Sivan bared her teeth. For a heartbeat, she looked like herself again. Terrified, yes. Shaking, yes. But alive under it. Sharp. My village, she said. We have to help my village. Exactly, Jabra said. But you might be safer holed up somewhere here until we fix this. I know the ways back. You know some ways back. The city changed 5 minutes ago. I know the song. The song is full of screaming monsters. Sivan's Susella spiralled with her defiance and emotion. Then I know the difference. These waters are my home. Jabra's eyes shifted. Umi did not intervene, and Jake realised that was deliberate. Jabra regarded Sivan for another moment, then gave a small, sharp nod. Useful, she said. Still reckless. Sivan's chin lifted a fraction. You are reckless. Yes, Jabra said, but I'm old enough to be allowed without an argument first. Jake made a sound that was much too close to a laugh. It hurt coming out. Sivan looked at him, shocked. Then, impossibly, she huffed. Not laughter, not really, but adjacent. The corridor breathed a little. Only a little. It was enough. Talia closed her slate. If we go back into that room, we need to know whether the babies are still inside. They're not all inside, Jake said. We saw at least some leave through the outer breach. The question is whether any remain feeding, Jabra said, or nesting, or sleeping, or doing some other awful baby Leviathan thing I lack a word for. Kilo can scan through narrow gaps, Jake said. Maybe. Passive only. I can attempt acoustic mapping without active pulse, Kilo said. Resolution will be poor, but poor is better than blind. We can also look, Hordaka said. Everyone turned towards the door. His voice was clearer now, still hoarse but steadier. Falonik has exterior cameras facing the rubble seams. I can see some of the chamber through gaps. Not much. Mostly silt and blood. Movement farther out. The babies are not immediately at the collapse. Can Falonik move? Yumi asked. A pause. Falonik answered instead of Hordaka. Limited movement. I am compressed between corridor door and collapse plane. Right lower limb pinned under loose stone but not crushed. Hull integrity acceptable. Pilot neural stress high. Recommend extraction from current posture when tactically reasonable. I'm fine, Hordaka said. Falonik did not pause. Pilot neural stress high. I said I'm fine. Pilot is lying. Umi looked towards the closed door. Something crossed his face. Not simply concern for Hordaka. Not simply tactical thought. Deeper, stranger, a decision approaching from a direction he did not like. Jabra saw it too. What are you thinking? She asked. Umi did not answer immediately. His lower hands folded. One upper hand remained near Syvan until she released it on her own. When she did, he rose to his full height. I am thinking, he said, that Echo told us where the data is. I am thinking that Falonik is the only Titan we have left. I am thinking that the wrong song in Chorax has been warning us for longer than we knew how to listen. I am thinking that Magarel died preserving information rather than simply blocking a door. Talia's colours shifted with dawning unease. Umi, she said. He looked at the sealed door. And I am thinking that I need to speak with Falonik and Hordaka face to face. Hordaka's voice came through, wary. About what? In person, Umi said. That sounds bad. It is. Can it wait? No. Another distant shriek rolled through the stone. This one was further away. Not comforting, only directional. Jabra checked her weapon, then looked to her remaining crew. On the door, then. Talia's hands tightened around her slate. We're opening the door? Not the rubble, Jabra said. Just the corridor seal. Falonik is between us and anything with teeth. If he says nothing is immediately chewing on him, I trust the giant adolescent's war machine. Thank you, Falonik said. I said adolescent. I chose to accept the useful portion. Umi's shroud flickered. A ghost of humour, there and gone. Then he became command again. Positions, he said. People moved. Not smoothly, not bravely in any shining way. They moved like wounded survivors with names in their mouths and blood in the water and a child among them who had learned too much. But they moved. Jabra took the left side of the door with 2 security. Talia tucked herself behind a broken support with her slate and a scanner. The medic crouched beside the wounded, one hand still pressed to a bandage that kept dark blood from clouding too fast. Syvan stood near Jake because Umi had put her there with one glance and because Jake, in his absurd alien shell, was still the thickest piece of cover inside the corridor. Jake lowered one hand towards his sonar controls and did not activate them. His thumb hovered. Kilo's voice softened in his skull. I will warn you if last options become current options. Thanks, he whispered. Umi moved to the centre of the door. His face was pale around the gills. His shroud was scarred by the last hour, ragged at the edges where screams had torn through it. But he set all 4 hands against the manual release and looked once towards Jabra. She nodded. He looked towards Jake. Jake nodded too, though he did not know what he was agreeing to beyond the next terrible step. Umi opened the channel to the Titan outside. Falonik, he said. Brace. Braced, Falonik replied. Hodaka. Yes? Umi's voice dropped, quiet and absolute. I am opening the door. The old corridor lock groaned under his hands. Stone teeth withdrew from stone sockets. The seam of the inner seal split, spilling Falonik's cold exterior light into the corridor. Beyond the widening gap, the young Tide Warden waited pinned in the throat of the ruin, armour scraped, optics bright, his great body pressed between the living and the dead. Umi stepped forward. He did not look past Falonik yet, towards the rubble, toward Echo, toward the chamber that had become legend again. He looked at the Titan, at the pilot inside him, and whatever he had been carrying behind his eyes, settled into a decision. Now, Umi said softly, we talk. And that is the end of chapter 16. I have, in fact, written the next one. Let's see what chat has to say. It says, I have ideas for the next book, especially with how to drag Jake into Jabra's world. Interesting. Eric says, we could also make an RPG system. I've got some ideas. I think that's something that we would like to have happen at some point, is make this setting available to people in whatever forms they want it to be in. Nothing is too big to die sounds like a line that should be called back to later. Yeah, I think so too. That would be some good dramatic irony / foreshadowing, etc. Talia's clanner influence coming out. Sorry! What are you thinking? Mild atrocity. Welcome in, Fezbearer. We are reading a novel we've been working on in the setting that chat helped to build. Our underwater mecha setting. We're at very dramatic points at the minute. We have our heroes stuck in a chamber in a city under the sea with big nasty things between them and freedom that could destroy the world. So, you know, no pressure. No pressure. Everything will be fine. And yeah, we are about to venture into the concept of what makes personhood on Shoal. We do not apologise for the clans. We appreciate the clans and what they have brought to this universe. Sure we do. That's why I keep doing ridiculous things to clanners in books I'm allowed to write, because nobody stops me. Like taking Alaric Ward to a harvest festival and introducing him to the concept of bobbing for apples. And tractor pulls and moonshine. Which is far more interesting than anything he's been doing in the original books. We do like to do some bullshit around here. I already know, I think I mentioned it last week. It's not a James Pond story. We do have 007 as something that exists in this setting. We have not yet written a 007 book. I want to at some point, because that would be really fun. But no, it's not a James Pond story. Yeah, I mentioned it last week. The Christmas Goob Drive is going to be for the Hungry Like the Wolf audiobook. And as long as we hit the Goob goal, there will be a Christmas special episode to go along with it. I already know what the plot will be. I know exactly what I want to do with it. Because for those of you who have read the rewrite that we did or listened to me read it on stream, which, incidentally, if you want a copy of the rewrite in PDF format, you can find it in the Discord, in the general Shenanigans area, or you can DM me over Discord and I will happily send it to you. It's universally, from everyone who's read it, seems to be better than the original, but it wouldn't exist without the original. So, you know, context is important. Read both. But it is available if anybody wants to read it. And at the end of it, there is a little quip from our female lead about Christmas. So I am going to write that Christmas episode. I know what the plot's going to be. I know what I want to do with it and why. I have run it past my sort of core editing and collaborator team. I shouldn't call them my editor team, because they are my collaborators in terms of scheming terrible things to inflict on the world. And all of them have responded very positively and think it's hilarious. So I think you guys will enjoy it when it happens. That's the Christmas plan. There will be more Hungry like the wolf. Whole ass shitpost edition. Clan Wolf isn't a clan, they're the personification of bad writing come home to roost. I mean, they are an easy thing to point to for that, but they're certainly not the only clan or house or group that has issues there. And we've had this conversation on previous streams. I'm sure we'll have it on future ones as well, but this is one of the problems you run into. This is a collaborative writing problem that can come up instead of one of the joys of collaborating. When you're doing collaborative writing on a deadline for a product line where the books aren't the focus, the books support another product, in this case the miniatures and the tabletop, elements that have nothing to do with story writing can come in to make decisions for you. And unless you are very good at working around those, you end up with the Ultramarines problem, or the Clan Wolf problem, or specific character problems, and people acting like complete idiots out of the blue for no reason, because this was done for balance creep, or new edition released, or a deadline that nobody expected suddenly being launched on them a week out from needing to deliver something, and there's no time to actually sort the problem out. Yeah. Still showing symptoms, keep taking the medicine. Well, that's the problem, is there is no medicine for we have a deadline a week from now that nobody knew was happening that requires us to change the status quo of all these established characters, and there's no time to even plan any of this out, let alone write it well. Yeah, we have a new mech to sell, write it into the story as a hero, would you? Yeah, you have that. 40k GW is the easiest thing to point to, where you can see the most extreme examples of these problems. And one of the things GW has done that is a particular GW sin that drives me up the wall, and was really what made me start disengaging from the setting even before, you know, withdrawing from tabletop play, retconning stuff from the Black Library. Well, we want to change how this faction works, so now we're going to pretend all this literature that we paid to be written into these genuinely good books, because the Black Library is a mixed bag. Some of it's really good, some of it's really bad, and some of the really good stuff is no longer canon because of stuff that happened like 5 to 10 years after the book was written and well received, and oh god. Oh god. So yes, all of that. All of that. I'm going to have a sip of this drink, and then we'll read some more Shoal before I really start going off the deep end on complaining about this problem. Nobody say Necrons to me. Especially as Lictor isn't here, and I feel like we have to have Lictor here for a Necron discussion. Alrighty. Let us have a look at chapter 17, because I was busy this week. I wrote. Oh, I need to respond to a message from Iden Desir of the Black Pants Legion. One moment, please. Right, there, that's that answered. Let's take a look in the studio. Alright, no definite answer there. Alright, so we might have a BB today. If not, we might have a fuzzy today instead, depending on what's going on in BB's neck of the woods. There's been some storms down there that have been causing some issues. I will check before we finish stream to let you guys know what will probably be happening next. But it does look like somebody will be following me up today, so you will have your entertainment. Bread and circuses. I suppose Lictor is a Necron as he does speak. I mean, Lictor's clearly just a normal human being with 3 hats and nothing else. As I said in another stream, this ain't the Astra Militarum. You're in the Guards, son. Yes. We are playing, for many people here already know, but there's a few new people and people who aren't often here. We are playing a Rogue Trader game with Lictor as the GM on Saturdays, as many weeks as we possibly can. It's been fantastic. I've been having a wonderful, wonderful time. And we stole an Eldar, and for the most part, I do in fact refuse the whole Eldari, Drukari. No, they're Dark Eldar. Please be more gentle with Iden. I do not think his skull can stand too much more damage. No, it's fine. It's fine. There's nothing in there. No brain cells in there to be bruised in the McKitting. It's fine. No, I'm very gentle with Iden. He is my favourite human being, after all. 3 hats, yes. Look, I will turn it on. I will turn on Phantom Lictor to come and join us for a minute, so you can see his 3 hats, because he would normally be here with us, but he's not available this week. Look, there's Lictor, and he has 3 hats. He has a hat for his hat for his hat. He has a top hat and a bowler hat and a tricorn, and one of them has a crab on it. Look at that. Lictor is rich and Dutch. Oh, fantastic. Okay, let's turn Lictor back off because he's just popping in, and there he goes again. We get our shoal crab back. Alrighty. Let's do some more reading. Chapter 17. The door opened onto Phalonic's wounded face. Not human, not shoaly, not anything simple enough to be translated by old instinct. But the young Titan's forward optic crown was turned towards them, his lights half shuttered against falling silt, his armoured cheek plates scraped where the collapse had pressed him sideways against the corridor throat. One of his lower limbs was braced hard against the floor. Another disappeared beneath a wedge of broken stone. His right shoulder structure was jammed close enough to the old wall that the coral veins beneath his plating pulsed dim and compressed. He was too large for the space. He made himself fit anyway. Behind him, the rubble wall sealed the corridor from the chamber where Echo had died. It was not a clean wall. It was a violent one. Fallen blocks, sanded stone, fractured growth braces, collapsed ceiling plates, broken panels, and ancient bone all fused into a heap that still settled by slow degrees. Thin streamers of darker water threaded through some of the gaps. Now and then, something beyond the stone flashed with distant movement and turned the cracks briefly red or white. Phalonic had wedged his body between the expedition and all of it. The sight did something to the corridor. Syvan made a soft sound and pressed one hand to her mouth. Talia's colours softened with pain. Jabra's claws flexed, the gesture too small to be command and too sharp to be comfort. The medic looked away and then forced herself to look back. Jake stood with one hand still near the sonar controls inside his suit and felt horribly, stupidly underdressed despite being encased in pressure armour. Phalonic's optics shifted. "The door opened successfully," he said. His voice carried through the corridor and the comms together, slightly distorted by stone pressure and damaged external speakers. Hordaka's voice followed a heartbeat later, smaller and too close to tears. "I told you he was fine." Phalonic paused. "Pilot is lying on my behalf." Umi stepped through the door. He did not go far. There was not room. Phalonic occupied the throat ahead of them, and behind him waited rubble, blood, echo, and whatever pieces of Chorax were still screaming. Umi stopped within arm's reach of the young Titan's head and set one hand, gently, against Phalonic's scraped cheek plating. The gesture was not inspection. It was greeting. Phalonic's optic lights dimmed and brightened once. "Counsellor," he said. "Warden," Umi replied. Hordaka exhaled over the comms. "Don't call him that like it's a funeral." Umi's mouth tightened. "It is not." "Good." "It is a beginning." Hordaka went quiet. Jake felt the corridor shift around that word. Not physically. Physically, the corridor remained old stone, too little space, too much death pressing close. but attention gathered. Jabra's eyes fixed on Umi. Talia's slate lowered by degrees. Sivan, still trembling, looked up from where she stood. That's going to need changing. Near Jake's suit. Umi did not turn towards the others. He kept his hand on Falonik. "There is something I must explain," he said. Jabra's mandibles clicked once. "Explain while useful hands work. In a moment." That is usually what people say before wasting one. Umi looked back at her. Jabra stopped. Not because he had snapped at her. He had not. His face held no anger at all. Umi was looking at her with the grave, hollow patience of a man standing at the edge of something sacred and terrible and finding no word simple enough to make it smaller. Jabra's claws settled. "Fine," she said. "One moment." Umi inclined his head, then turned back to the young Titan. "Falonik," he said, "you know what Echo was." "Temple Guardian, Library Titan, Archive Bearer of the Upper Reef Line, Magarel's bonded companion." "Yes." "She was old," Falonik said. "She was very old." "She knew songs from before I was grown." "She knew songs from before your core was seeded." The young Titan's shroud, dimly felt even through stone and terror, pulsed once. Jake had never been good at reading Titans. They were not like Sholey. They were not like ships either, despite his human brain's constant impulse to put anything large and crude into that category. Falonik's presence felt like pressure through a cathedral wall. Young pressure, strong but not settled. The difference between a bell newly cast and one that had rung over a city for generations. "Echo is dead," Falonik said. Umi's hand remained steady. "Yes." The word went through them all. Sivan closed her eyes. Hordaka's breath caught audibly. Falonik's optics dimmed. For a few heartbeats there was only rubble settling beyond him and the far-away muffled cry of something dying in Chorax. Then Umi said, "But Titans do not always die as other people die." Jake's eyes flicked to Talia. She had gone very still. Jabra's claw drifted to the Tide Warden token again. Falonik said nothing. Umi drew one slow breath through his gills. "When a Sholey dies, what remains may become memory. Song, flesh, record. If they are beloved or important or simply found by someone who knows the rites, their life may be brought into the greater currents in many ways. But a Titan is not only body, not only pilot, not only memory. A Titan carries coral grown around purpose, experience, training, language, sensory pattern, root memory, battle reflex, civic obligation. The oldest Titans carry more history in their living cores than many towns hold in all their archives." His fingers spread gently over Falonik's scarred plating. Echo carried a library. Talia's voice was very soft. "A portion of one." "A portion of a true library," Umi said, "which is more than most of us could carry if we were emptied and filled again 10 times over." Falonik's coral veins pulsed again. Hordaka said, "What are you saying?" Umi closed his eyes for a moment. "I am saying Echo's body is broken. Magarel is dead. But Echo's coral may not be gone. Her core may be inert, wounded, severed from pilot and motion and outer sense, but not empty. The knowledge she held, the roots she remembered, the interpretations she had begun before death, the data package Magarel secured. These may remain." "They remain in the core," Talia said, more to herself than anyone else. "That is why Max told us. Secondary core, main memory intact." "Yes." Jake felt the next thing coming before Umi said it. He hated that he felt it, hated that the corridor had narrowed around a possibility too large to dodge. Umi opened his eyes. Falonik could inherit her. No one spoke. The words did not echo. The water swallowed them the way water swallowed everything. But they remained. Hordaka's voice came through the comms, thin and immediate. "No." Falonik did not answer. Hodaka said it again, harder. No. Umi bowed his head once. I hear you. No, I don't think you do. He's... Hodaka stopped. When he continued, the anger had cracked open around fear. He's young. Yes. He only just woke into this work. We only just... The pilot's breath shuddered. I only just got to know him. Not as a training frame, not as a warden assignment. Him, Nick, Folonic. He's not a container for a dead titan because we're scared. No, Umi said. He's not spare room. No. He's not Echo. No. Hodaka's voice broke. He's mine. Folonics' optic lights brightened. The young titan made a sound. At first, Jake thought it was damaged machinery, a grinding from the shoulder maybe, or stone sliding under his pinned limb. Then the sound repeated, lighter this time. Folonic was laughing. It was low and resonant and strange, a pulse through plates and coral, a small earthquake trying to be gentle. Even the rubble seemed to pause around it. Hodaka, Folonic said. Don't laugh at me. I am not laughing at you. You are clearly laughing at me. I am laughing because you are afraid I will forget the first thing I ever knew. Hodaka went silent. Folonics' voice softened. Before I understood the outer currents, I knew your pulse. Before I could name the direction of my limbs, I knew the shape of your fear when instructors watched us. Before I knew duty, I knew your hand on the interface, asking permission before deeper link. Jake looked down. He did not mean to. It felt indecent somehow to witness that kind of intimacy. Not romantic, not familial, not any human category that fit cleanly. Pilot and Titan. Two persons sharing one shape in the world. Folonic continued. Echo told us to keep the living breathing. Magarel told us not to assign duty to grief. If I can take what remains of Echo and use it to keep the living breathing, then I honour them both. Umi is talking about paragons. I would not be the first, but you would still be my pilot. My friend. You don't know what it will do to you, Hodaka whispered. No. It could change you. Yes, it will. It could hurt you. Yes. You could become someone else. Folonics' laugh came again, softer now and no less certain. I am already becoming someone else, every moment. So are you. That is not the same as being lost. Hodaka made a wounded sound. Folonics' optics lowered until they seemed to look not at Umi, not at the corridor, but inwards towards the pilot carried in his body. In every possible iteration of myself, Folonics said, there will be one fact that I trust. Hodaka did not speak. You are my pilot, Folonic said. The only pilot I choose. You are my friend. The corridor fell apart without moving. Siphon's face crumpled again. The medic turned away this time and did not immediately turn back. Talia pressed one hand hard over her mouth. One of Jabra's remaining crew made the Sarah grief sound again, low and contained and terrible. Jabra herself stared at Folonic for a long moment. Then she inhaled, sharp and annoyed, as if furious that anything had been allowed to make her feel. Lovely, she said roughly. Sacred, moving, deeply inconvenient. None of this matters unless we can reach Echo without being shredded into chum. Umi's hand remained on Falonic's cheek, but his eyes shifted to Jabra. Yes, he said. The word was command again. Jabra looked almost relieved. Good, she said. The plan began badly because all plans made after disaster began as a refusal to admit how little they controlled. Jabra insisted on facts first. Folonic had limited exterior view through 3 rubble seams. Kilo could supplement passively from Jake's suit once he reached the debris line, provided he did not use an active sonar pulse. Talia's instruments could read pressure shifts, electrical remnants, and some organic movement through stone, but only if she placed sensors close enough to the corridor door to get a useful line. The chamber beyond remained unstable. The outer breach was open. At least 3 juveniles had exited into the city. Possibly all 5. Possibly not. The siphon ray concentration had decreased in the immediate laboratory, but remained high far beyond the wall, where the city's old outer waters had become a feeding ground. Echo's body lay beyond the collapse, near the original access throat. Felonic could see part of her through the upper right seam. A curve of shoulder plating, a darkened tendril, faint coral glow beneath stone. No movement, no shroud, no response to Titan hails. Magarel did not answer. Jabra finally drew a rough map in the silt on a fallen slab, carving lines with the tip of one claw. "This is us," she said, marking the corridor. "This is Felonic, currently making a door out of himself. Here is the main collapse. Echo is there, angled across the throat. Babies broke outward here. Siphon rays came through here, here, and above." Jake watched the scratch map take shape and tried not to think of it as a wound diagram. Jabra tapped the corridor mark. "Talia, Sivan, medic, wounded. All of you stay inside the corridor behind the seal." Sivan jerked. "No!" "Yes," Jabra said.
"My village."
"Needs you alive to warn it if we fail." Sivan's mouth shut. The words had gone in. Jabra continued before the girl could find a way around them. "Talia leads fallback. If the roof comes down on us, or if the babies return and we cannot hold them, you take the medic, the wounded, and Sivan back through the tunnel, out through the armory. You go fast. You do not come back for us. You run for the village and send a distress call to every frequency, every song channel, every passing current that will carry panic." Talia's colours flashed.
"If you are trapped..."
"You run." "Talia," Umi said quietly. She looked at him. He did not soften it. "You run." Talia swallowed.
"Understood."
Jabra pointed to the space beyond Felonic. "Working party. Me, Maitu, Umi, Jake, Felonic." "Hodaka," Hodaka said through the comms. Jabra did not look up. "Pilot included in Titan. Working party moves stone carefully. Priority is not reopening the whole chamber. Priority is making a crawl and tool path to Echo's secondary core access." "Crawl path," Jake repeated. Jabra looked up at him. "You are the largest problem." "I love being included." "Your suit is useful but big. You stay near the rear of the rubble gap unless needed. You have the sonar." The word changed the water. Everyone felt it. Jake's hand twitched towards the control again, though the system remained locked down and inactive. Jabra saw the movement. "If a juvenile moves towards us because of the rubble noise, you fire. Directional if you can, ugly if you must." Jake nodded slowly. "Everyone else behind the corridor seal," Jabra said. "Door closed between them and us to cut the pulse and shield from falling stone. Felonic's body and the rubble do some of the rest." Jake looked from Jabra to Umi. "I need a hard call on the sonar. I can't be the only person deciding when everyone gets hurt." Umi nodded. "You and I make the call together," he said. "Together how?" "If there is time, I will authorise. If there is no time, you act." Jake hated that. It was the right answer. He nodded anyway. Talia crouched beside the scratch map, all professional focus now, though one of her hands still trembled. "If you reach Echo, what exactly are you extracting?" Umi did not answer immediately. That was enough. Jabra's eyes narrowed. "You do know, yes?" "I know what needs to be done in principle," Umi said. "That is one of my least favourite phrases." "It should be." Umi looked past Felonic towards the rubble. Magarel's final instruction was made as a library guardian preserving a fallen Titan's recovery pathway. She expected, I think, that if we survived, we would mark Echo's location, seal the city, return months from now with a full library recovery team, Titan surgeons, choral singers, legal witnesses, ritual peers, grief speakers, history keepers. Time. His voice roughened. She did not expect us to cut into Echo's body while the water was still warm. No one said anything. Phelonic's optics dimmed. Umi folded one lower hand over the other. To remove a core cleanly from a dead titan is delicate work. To read it without damaging the living coral is more delicate still. To prepare it for inheritance... He shook his head. That is not field work. That is not done in a corridor with stones shifting under us and predators outside. But it can be done, Jabra said. Umi's jaw tightened. Perhaps. Not good enough. It's the answer I have. Can you do it? Umi inhaled slowly. No, he said. The word was so quiet it seemed impossible that everyone heard it. But everyone did. Hodaka spoke first. You just said you knew how. I know how, Umi said. Knowing is not the same as being able. Talia's colours softened again with that dawning carefulness people use around old wounds. Because of your burnout. Jake looked at Umi. This time, Umi did not close down. Perhaps he had no energy left for it. Yes, he said, because of my burnout. Phelonic's shroud shifted. Umi kept his gaze on the rubble. I was a Tide Warden, long enough to know the doctrine, the rites, the language between pilot and titan. Long enough to link under emergency depth and stay linked too long when we were told to withdraw. Long enough to burn channels that do not regrow. Hodaka's voice softened. I didn't know. No. Why didn't you tell me? It was not your weight to carry. Phelonic made a low, unhappy sound. Umi looked at him. I can guide, Umi said. I can lay a shroud. I can steady some interfaces. I can read enough coral response to know when something is going wrong. But I cannot pilot, not truly. Not even briefly enough to open Echo from within, if her core requires pilot recognition to release. Jabra rubbed both hands together once. So, we may reach Echo and still fail. Yes. Excellent. I prefer my disasters layered. There may be manual routes, Talia said. There may be, Umi agreed. Echo was a library titan. She would have preservation redundancies. Yes. She wanted us to retrieve the data. Yes. So we try. Umi looked at her. This time he did soften. Yes, he said. We try. That was all the permission anyone needed. The work began. All right, I'm going to check in on chat before I read the rest of this with the time we have left today. Let's see what you guys are saying. This section about death is easy to point to reference Surely Afterlife, briefly of course. Yep. The plan began badly, that line goes hard. I mean, that's the old military saying, isn't it? No plan survives first contact with the enemy. Which, yep, Concept is saying that as well. I did some research on sonar. Most active pings are directional via beam forming? I don't know which is either. I did read that it can be directional. I didn't know if that would be the case for this sort of suit. But if it's directional, that's great. I don't think it changes the narrative necessarily, but if Jake uses it, that will change how we describe it. So, Orcslayer says, it's going great so far. I am pleased to hear it. Very pleased to hear it. I'm going to take just a brief moment's break. I'm going to hop up and use the restroom and have a drink and clear orifices, because one of the things I find with reading a load is congestion. Just congestion. So I'm going to go and sort that, and then we'll read what we have left and see what you guys think about where we're going. And yeah, that'll close us out for this week, I think. Yeah, Archon Erica is saying, I imagine an exploratory suit might also have an omnidirectional ping to get a full picture surrounding the suit. Yeah, so we just need to decide, is his omnidirectional? Is it targeted? Can he choose either or? Does he have two different settings? And yeah, that's all stuff we can discuss in the editing process if we don't get to it sooner, and that will be completely fine. Right, I shall be back momentarily. Please do not burn down chat while I'm away. It'll be quiet for like 2 minutes. I'll be right back. I see you have been very responsible in my absence, chat. Very responsible indeed. Right. You coming back up, Anchor? Chat are being terrible. I told them not to burn down, chat. And what have they done? I know. Anchor is very disappointed in you all. Either that or she's just disappointed in the lack of treats I'm currently giving her. It could be either or. Good girl. Good girl. Alrighty. Let us finish up what we have in this chapter. The work began with Folonic shifting his trapped weight by increments so small Jake could barely see them. Every movement made stone grind against armour. Every grind made the corridor tense, waiting for the ceiling to answer. Jabra's 2 remaining crew moved beneath his lifted shoulder, claws and tools finding loose wedges, dragging them free one by one. Jake stood at the rear of the work line at first, exactly where Jabra put him. His suit lamps cut across the rubble, turning the suspended silt into a universe of dirty stars. Kilo kept passive sensors running, her little body clamped to his shoulder like a very judgmental barnacle. Movement beyond the main chamber, she reported quietly. Large organic bodies, distance uncertain, none approaching the collapse plane directly. Babies? Unknown. Siphon rays? Also unknown. Helpful. Accurate. Umi worked near Falonic's head, one hand touching the Titan whenever Folonic had to strain. Jake could not tell what passed between them. Not words, not exactly. The young Titan would shift, Umi's shroud would spread, Falonic's coral glow would steady. Hordaka breathed raggedly over the link during the worst adjustments, and each time Folonic spoke to him in low, private tones the channel did not fully catch. Jabra worked like grief had been built into her joints. No wasted motion, no hesitation. She evaluated every stone before she moved it, every pressure point before she allowed one of her people to cut or pry. Twice she stopped Jake from stepping in because his suit strength would have moved too much too fast. Once she ordered him forward to lift a slab no Shoaly body could have shifted without machinery. Slow, she snapped. I'm slow. Slower. Any slower and this is meditation. Then achieve enlightenment quickly. He almost smiled. Then the slab came free and exposed a narrow view through the rubble. The chamber beyond was red. Not entirely. Water diluted everything eventually. Currents pulled, silt settled, blood feathered out into brown and black and fading pink. But there was so much of it that the whole laboratory seemed stained from within. Broken equipment drifted in lazy spirals. A dead siphon ray hung half impaled on a torn piece of Echo's outer plating, its long body curled like a ribbon. Beyond that, through the haze, Jake saw Echo. Only part of her. Enough. The old Titan lay wedged beneath the collapsed throat, body bent around the access she had sealed. Her outer shell was cracked open in 3 places. Coral light glowed faintly from inside those wounds. Dim gold blue pulsing so slowly Jake thought at first it was only reflection. His chest hurt. Mags, he whispered. Folonic saw through the gap as well. The young Titan went utterly still. Hordaka's breath shivered. Echo, Folonic said. There was no answer from the dead Titan. Only that faint, stubborn glow. Umi bowed his head. Jabra let the silence last 4 breaths. Then she said, We have line of sight, not access. Keep moving. They kept moving. Time became labour. Stone, brace, scan, listen, wait for a distant shriek, continue. Sometimes Chorak screamed beyond the chamber. Sometimes it shuddered with impact so far away they felt like weather. Once, a pressure wave rolled through the rubble and the entire collapse shifted inwards by 2 handspans, sending everyone scrambling back, while Folonic braced his whole pinned body against the doorframe to keep the corridor from choking on stone. Jake's thumb hovered over the sonar control. Nothing came through. Not yet. They went back to work. Sivan watched through the partially open corridor seal until the medic pulled her back. Talia sent sensor updates in tight, clipped bursts. At last, the gap widened enough that Jabra could push one claw and half her body into the rubble throat. She went still. Echo's secondary access is below the shoulder mass, she said. Buried.
How buried?
Talia asked from the corridor. Annoyingly. Umi moved closer, lowering himself beside the gap. He reached one hand through the opening, not touching Echo, only the water between them. His shroud moved with him. Jake felt the effort from where he stood. Not as sound or pressure exactly. More like watching someone trying to lift with an injured limb and hide the pain. Umi's shroud extended, thinned, trembled. For an instant, it brushed the faint coral glow inside Echo's broken body. The reaction was immediate. Umi flinched hard enough that Jabra grabbed his harness. Phalonic's optics flashed. Counsellor? I'm all right, Umi said too fast. You are lying, Phalonic said. You are spending too much time with your pilot. Hordaka taught me excellence. Debatable, Jabra muttered. Umi pulled his hand back. His fingers shook. Jake saw it. So did everyone else. Talia's voice came through the comms, soft and frightened. Umi? The core is alive enough to answer, Umi said. That's good, Jake said. Umi did not look at him. It is alive enough to answer like a wounded god dreaming under stone. That was less good. Jabra's claw tightened on his harness before she released him. Can you open the secondary access? Umi's gills flared. No. The word fell heavier this time. I can feel the path. I know what must be asked. Ecosystems are sealed around Magarel's last command. Preserve package, preserve memory, await recovery. The core will not release to tools alone. Not unless we cut deeper than I am willing to cut without knowing what we destroy. Pilot recognition, Talia said. Yes. Hordaka? Jabra suggested. No, Umi said immediately. Hordaka bristled. You don't know what I can do. I know you are already in deep link with a pin tightened under stress. Okay, this should be deep concordance because this is a Sholey speaking. Who knows these terms inherently? There we go. I know you're already in deep concordance with a pin tightened under stress, Umi said. I know Phalonic may need to receive the inheritance. I know asking you to reach into Echo while holding Phalonic stable risks both of you. And you? Umi's expression did not change. I told you. The rubble shifted softly in the silence. Burned out. Jake looked at Umi's shaking hand. He looked at Phalonic, pinned and young and trying to be brave in a body too large for the corridor. He looked at the red chamber beyond, where Echo's faint light pulsed under stone. He looked back through the corridor seal, where Sivan sat with both Susella worrying around her face, staring towards the city her fear kept naming. Then he looked inward. At the suit, at the human body inside it, at the ridiculous little candle of his psionics. Weak by Sholey standards. Strange and strong by human ones. Enough to hear a wrong song where others heard none. Enough to feel the edge of quiet and horror and Umi's concern. Enough that Shoal had noticed him from the beginning as an absence with a person hidden inside. An empty shape that moves, Umi had said once. Interesting. Jake swallowed. Kilo, he said very quietly, not over the general channel. No, Kilo said. He blinked. I didn't ask yet. You are about to suggest something medically, culturally, technically and spiritually reckless. I am beginning with no to save time. Can it work? That is not a fair question. Can it work? A pause. Kilo's voice, when it came, was very precise. I do not know. Jake took that in. Then he opened the channel. Umi. The counsellor turned. Jake could feel everyone look at him again. He hated it less this time. Or maybe he was simply too scared for embarrassment to find room. If pilot recognition is the problem, Jake said, what does Echo need? Umi's eyes narrowed slightly. A pilot. Define pilot. Jake. No, define it. Jabra's claw made a small warning click. Human. Jake ignored her, which was possibly brave and possibly evidence of concussion. Does it need somebody bonded to her? Someone trained, someone with Shoaly psionics, someone who can make the request in the right shape? What is the actual lock? Umi stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked away. That was the answer. Jake's pulse kicked. It needs a shroud-shaped request, Jake said. It needs more than that. But that is part of it. Yes. And you can lay a shroud. Umi went still. Talia's voice came from the corridor, barely a whisper. Jake? He could not look at her. Earlier, Jake said slowly, you said you can guide. You can lay a shroud. You can steady interfaces. You just can't pilot. You can't link. That is not just, Umi said. Something dangerous had entered his voice. Not anger, fear wearing armour. That is the centre of the matter. Concordance is no small thing. Jake nodded inside his suit. I know. You do not. Probably not. You are not a Titan pilot. No. You are not Shoaly. Very aware. You are barely psionically present by our standards. Also aware. You are inside a machine that reads to most living systems like a silent stone with anxiety. Kilo says that's my brand. Jake. The name hit harder than the warnings. He took one breath, then another. The corridor waited. Outside, somewhere in Chorax, a juvenile scream of the deep shrieked over its kill, distant enough to be survivable and close enough to remind them time was not kind. Jake looked through the rubble at Echo's faint, fading coral glow. He thought of Mag's voice. Do not attempt retrieval until safe. He thought of how safety had become a thing behind them, not ahead. Then he looked back at Umi. If you tell me how, Jake said, and lay your shroud over mine... His mouth was dry. His hands were shaking. He finished anyway. What if I piloted for a few moments? No one moved. Even the rubble seemed to stop settling. Umi's face changed. Not with hope, with recognition, with horror. With the kind of thought that, once born, could not be politely killed. Phalonics' optics brightened by one slow degree. Hordaka whispered, What? Kilo spoke in Jake's skull, very softly. Red flag. Every possible red flag. Jake kept his eyes on Umi. The former Tide Warden stared back at him through the dim corridor light, his burned-out shroud trembling at the edges as if some old wound had just remembered the shape of an impossible door. And beyond the rubble, Echo's dead core pulsed once. Faint, gold blue, waiting. Let me try. And that is the end of chapter 17. How are we doing, chat? The goodest girl, yeah, she is. We have two of the goodest girls, and we have a goodest boy. Hello, Mama Bionic. It is lovely to see you. I hope you are doing well. Changing your timeline to include my nonsense. Not sure how sensible and wise that is, but it is always lovely to see you. And I hope I entertain as much as the others. Yeah, Pip had a balk. Something outside. I suspect it was trash getting collected. And it's very important that all trash collectors must be balked at least once. I will give him the redeemed pets. He is getting scruffle scritches because he is now on my hip. Kilo says that's my brand. I'm glad that line hit. I saw Anxious Stones open for the Stone Roses in '94. Fantastic. Something I really appreciate is how we've a similar cadence in our writing, but the way you express it is completely different. The longer, shorter choppiness makes for a quick clip, but it still flows nicely. There was a couple of points where I was reading that out loud where there's a little bit too much chop in this for me. My prose is not as smooth as it should be, and this is, for your sake, concept. Chat is probably sick of hearing this. One of my top editing techniques when you're writing is read your stuff aloud. Because you will notice things that you don't notice just reading it inside your own head. And the first time I read these chapters aloud is on stream with you guys. Usually because I only finish them like the night before stream, or 20 minutes before stream, depending on how my week has gone. So I haven't had time. So we get to go through that process together on stream. So yeah, it's really good to vary your paragraphs and your sentences up. If everything is long sentences, it becomes very stodgy and plodding, and readers will start to gloss over sentences quite a lot of the time. If it's too short, it starts to feel juvenile and choppy, and you don't get into a rhythm as a reader with what's going on, and that can be distracting as well. For book club, I have been reading Empress Teresa by Norman Bouton, because in my book club we mostly read terrible books and have a terrible time altogether with alcohol. It's great. But one of the problems that we're having with Empress Teresa is the writing is very juvenile. The word choice is very juvenile. The sentences are very short and often disconnected. So you're looking for that sort of happy medium between the two. So yeah, there is some chop in this, which I think there needs to be. There's a lot of action going on at the minute. We're clearing the rubble. We had the fight scene in chapter 15 last week, and that needed some shorter sentences because that implies motion and short and choppy. But in other areas, you're going to want it to be more flowing and loose and smooth. And I feel like there's some areas in this chapter where I've got the balance wrong. So that will be something that gets handled in the first editing pass. It says there would be documented cases of humans attempting concordance with Titans, all end in disaster. Would those cases be something that any of our characters that are here now would know? I don't mind what you think the answer is either way. Just, is that something that has been documented and these characters wouldn't know because they're not in the right circles to have heard about it? Or do they know about it and that adds another layer of insanity to what Jake is suggesting? Either will be fine. Pros feel like you got done writing a clan main character. I mean, in some of the voices, yeah, I think I think that will be a case. You can tell when I'm also working on other projects at the same time. But that's all stuff we can smooth out. We're rough drafting at the minute. Concept says, I need to get over my aversion to reading things aloud. I don't know why it bugs me so badly, but I cannot do it. One of the biggest things I would suggest to get started with that is pick a day when you're the only person home. So nobody is hearing you. It's just you and the prose. That's a good place to start. I was very much the same when I first came across that piece of advice, and there was part of me that was like, oh, I don't need to do that. Surely that's just a piece of advice that doesn't apply to everyone, and it won't be that useful. I'll just really pay attention to what I'm reading. No. Reading it aloud makes a huge difference. It genuinely does. And I picked some occasions where it was just me and my nonsense, and started doing it. And once I realized how beneficial it was, it became easier. And then wonderful members of the Black Pants Legion bullied me into getting my own stream slot. And now reading my nonsense aloud has become immeasurably easier just through exposure therapy. I think that the longer way to your prose can be both useful and problematic in and of itself. Yeah. I do not like Poe, but I do not disparage his work. With that said, Poe's writing drives me absolutely batty because he does heavy, slow, ponderous, oppressive so well. It's long, it's winding, even reading through it is a slog, which was 100% intended reading process, but I cannot stand it. And it is completely fine for people to have certain authors they love and certain authors that they hate, without that necessarily meaning that one one author is bad or good or not. personal preference always comes into things. I mean, for me, there are writers out there who do stream of consciousness writing who have won awards. I cannot stand anything that is written in the style of stream of consciousness. I personally think all of that work is trash, and that is just a personal preference coming through, because some things can be well written that way. I do personally feel from a technical aspect that it is a style that is more prone to bad writing than other styles, but that doesn't mean that it isn't valid when it's used correctly, but I will still hate it regardless. You know, and that's fine. That's fine. It's just an opinion. It doesn't mean people who enjoy it should somehow be denied that enjoyment. Will says, I recently started rereading Sherlock Holmes, and what has struck me is how easy it is to read. I'm going to have to read it again with my analytical head on when I've finished to work out why. It will be interesting to see if that's a case of the sentence length, the word choice. One of the things that's very encouraged in modern day writing is to try and aim at sort of a grade 6 average reading level. That's not to say you can't ever have big words or complicated sentences, and personally I feel grade 6 is a little bit too low. I like to aim for somewhere between grade 7 to grade 9, depending on what it is I'm writing and who it's intended for. But if you're writing an entire novel and every chapter is at a grade 9 reading level, it could become tiring for a generalized audience. So this is where you have to think about who you're writing for. Night Owl is saying conversational writing style, simple lexicon for the era, short and evocative scene descriptions. Yeah, and that might be partly. It wouldn't surprise me if those things come through, especially if some of the Sherlock Holmes work was written to be released in periodical publications. So the kind of audience it was going to, you need it to be accessible to that audience. It's why you use a certain writing style when you're writing for young adults versus, adults. It's why you have certain writing conventions in romance versus hard sci-fi. And what you can get away with in different genres and different audience types is going to flex with who's going to be reading it. If you're writing hard science and you're using very juvenile technical terms, people are going to notice, because that's not what they're there for. They're there for the hard science. They want the more complicated terms. You should be using them. At the same time, if you're trying to write a very upbeat adventure story for a 14-year-old that's also, going to be sci-fi, you won't use quite so complex words, but you'd want to make sure that the ones you scatter in there are either ones that are going to be meaningful or might be something that would make that person go and look up the thing that they're reading about and become more educated, or become educated through the way you describe it in the book. That the best writing opens people to new ideas and new knowledge in a enjoyable manner. So yeah. Okay, Ed says Jake would probably know, depending on how bad we make CITS. The Tide Wardens might as well. Doubly so since Jake has a real shroud. Okay, yeah, we'll incorporate that in then. As I said, I didn't mind what the answer was in either direction, just where you felt that the answer should be. The main idea is it's such a bad idea that humans going near Titans make both other humans and Sholey nervous. Yes. And I think perhaps we'll have a chat in the week at some point, Ed, for where we think this should go next. Because does it need to be that Jake's offer is treated as very meaningful and significant, but incredibly impractical, and we need to do things in a different way? Because we've talked about several ways this could go. Or do we have it that this is incredibly risky, but it's worth trying for the brief moment that it's needed? And we'll figure that out. We will figure that out. Concept Sept, I have no idea if they go by the same 9 here, but if one trips across Load, tell him I said thank you. I'm assuming it will be who we know as Load 1, and absolutely, next time I speak to Load, I'll be like, hey, Concept Step by, stop by, it was a great time. Incredibly dangerous for Jake at a minimum, for the Titan core, if I have my way. I mean, we'll definitely get together on it, Ed. If you haven't, oh, hey, Load is here. You can tell him yourself, Concept. Hello, Load. How are you doing? Concept has been exposed to my nonsense. Yeah, we'll have a conversation at some point this week, Ed. I think that might be just some, just a nice chat. It won't be anything complicated or stressful, I promise. If you haven't heard from me by, say, like Wednesday, please come and annoy me. Ah, Fuzzy is dropping in with the note I was going to go and have a look at. Okay. Fuzzy will be taking over BB's slot at the top of the hour or sooner. Do you want to take over at 1:30, Fuzzy? When do you want to come and entertain our wonderful masses? What suits the Fuzzy? I can hear soft squeaking going on behind me. Anka has found a squeaker in a toy that is not yet dead. So that is going to be my afternoon, is her trying to kill a squeaky toy. I have read everything I have for you guys. Fuzzy is here and says he's ready to go at any point. So what I'm probably going to do is clear off, let Fuzzy have the airwaves to entertain you guys, and I will hopefully see you on Sunday for WBPLW. I hope you enjoyed the nonsense we read this week and the wittering in between bits. Concept says, I was doing some writing before the stream showed up, so now I've just been coasting and hanging out. Well, I hope it's been enjoyable hanging out. It's certainly been a pleasure having you in chat, as with all of our regulars and everyone who contributes to this nonsense. I appreciate it very much. The toy is not yet dead. It's only a matter of time and not much at that. It depends. We found a series of toys that the dogs absolutely love. And although they absolutely kill them and they will get inside it quickly and start pulling the fluff out, the squeakers are placed in such a way that it normally takes them a couple of days to get it, which is wonderful. So we'll see how that goes. It is a brand new toy she got today. So with any luck, 2 or 3 days before it's fully dead. Keep her out of mischief. Right, I will get out of here. Fuzzy is coming up next with some actual farming, it sounds like. I hope you guys all have a good time. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next week, hopefully with Lichter back. Take it easy. Be good to each other. You are the best community on Twitch.